Okay, so people will join in gradually, but welcome everyone that comes onto this chat. I'm super excited. I'll wait a few moments, see a few people coming in. You can introduce yourself. I can't see from my side, so you can put your name. And also if you have any questions coming in, my hope is that this session will become quite interaction-based, and that this is just me sort of opening up with discussion around Ayurveda and how we can implement it into our lives, and also just as an educator of Ayurveda, seeing some of the fundamental flaws of how we've approached this science in the West as it's becoming more and more popular. So hopefully this will be illuminating. Hopefully this will connect some of the dots and dispel some of the myths around how we can actually implement this science into our life, having it be so ancient and sort of far out. Okay, so everyone, let's take a few deep breaths together so we can just center and get into this space together. But go ahead and just roll the shoulders back and down, stretch the back to sit tall, and ground through the sits bones. You can gently close the eyes and just begin to breathe through the nose. You can breathe through the low belly, mid belly, fill the upper chest, and exhale chest, mid belly, low belly. Let's just do this a few times to center ourselves. So inhale, low belly, mid belly, upper chest. Seeing how much prana we can let in, and exhaling chest first, low belly. Squeezing all the air out. One last time together. Low belly, mid belly, upper chest. And letting chest out, mid belly, low belly, exhaling completely. I'm going to start with a few invocation mantras and then we're going to dive right in, okay? So just praying to my beautiful gurus, my beautiful teachers and mentors in the path of bhakti and also in the path of Ayurveda. I've been blessed to have so many incredible teachers. So I'll say some prayers now and then we'll jump right in. Om Jnanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrindam. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Vanshakapatarubhascha kripa sindhubhyevacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Okay, so welcome everyone. I see people are tuning in. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Yamuna Bihari Das. I'm tuning in here from upstate New York. I lived at the Bhakti Center for many years in Manhattan as part of that beautiful project and have studied Ayurveda for the past 6 or 7 years and initially got introduced to it just through some introductory books and started to kind of make sense of a little bit of what it was talking about with lifestyle principles. And as I got deeper and deeper, I did so much self-study and lived in India for quite some time, studied with really incredible teachers and came back to New York, did the same thing, and actually started my own practice in New York City, seeing hundreds of people all over the city, treating them using the science of Marma therapy, using Ayurvedic consultation and lifestyle, and seeing profound changes in people's lives. And so I've also trained many people in the science of Ayurveda through 200-hour Ayurveda trainings, Marma trainings, so many wonderful offerings and one-on-one also. And seeing some of the major misconceptions around health and around sciences such as Ayurveda. And so this is meant to be a dynamic discussion. I'd love to just hear from all of you. What are some of your ideas or questions around Ayurveda? And we'll just keep the energy flowing between us, okay? So just a little bit about my story with Ayurveda and health is, once I met the practitioners of Bhakti Yoga, I became vegetarian. And I think when many of us do that, and also just being in college, I had pretty much zero idea of how to care for my health, how to care for my body and my consciousness, and also like not really any idea of how to cook. So like a luxury meal for me would be like sweet potatoes just baked in the oven and some ketchup. And then in the morning, having like some superfood smoothies. And my conception at the time was basically, okay, take all these different components of food that are good for you, like spirulina, like all the superfoods, powders, like kale, bananas, etc. As many of those things as possible. Oh yeah, and like a half jar of peanut butter, and put it together in a smoothie, because obviously if you take all the best things that are delicious and nutritious and put it all together, it'll equal the most healthy thing for you possible. And so I would make these smoothies, and it would I was like, wow, these must be so good for you, because I wasn't feeling hunger for like most of the day. I was like, I feel full until like 2 or 3 p.m. And I was like, oh, because it's actually clogging my system completely and is very hard to digest. It's ice cold. It has clogging ingredients. And so I really had zero reference point for what health was, although I had some vague idea of there's healthy ingredients like vegetables, and stay away from microwave foods and processed foods and meat. But I didn't have a sense of why I was experiencing any discomfort in the body, like digestive disorders. I had bloating that was going on, or gas, or insomnia, and I couldn't sleep many nights. And just thought, oh, this is something I have to live with. And I'm not sure exactly where the source is. Maybe it's my mother, maybe it's coming from my parents or from my environment for some situation. And so I think as I began to deepen in the science of Ayurveda, it became a lot clearer that actually it's a science of self-responsibility. It's a science of self-awareness, and also attuning to nature in a very scientific way that then becomes very intuitive after we're trained in it. So that's a little introduction. I want to dive into also just some of the main things that Ayurveda is not, and then kind of come full circle and see how we can begin to shift our view of this science so that we can implement it in a dynamic way. And so if any questions come up for you at any time, just slide them in, and I can actually see them popping up here. So I'm happy to answer them. One thing that I think has become very prominent in what Ayurveda is not is, as it's become very westernized, the science that's been, proliferated in India for 7,000 plus years and beyond that. I like to think that, and Ayurveda also shows us that Ayurveda is as old as nature itself. So as long as fire is hot, as long as earth is solid, as long as water is liquid, as long as air moves, the principles of Ayurveda will hold true. But as it's come to the West in different forms through different teachers and books, and sort of become modernized and westernized, we see that it's sort of transformed to fit different trends that we've had in our society as far as health and beauty. And so one thing that Ayurveda is not is simple tips for beauty or self-pampering. I think that's a lot of the prominent messaging we get, with massage and tongue scraping and oil pulling and hot water and tea. And those are all, of course, incredible steps to take with your health. But it's actually something much deeper, and something that when we want to go deeper with it, we recognize that actually any experience we're having in life is a result of some aspect of our internal consciousness, right? I forgot what author mentioned this, but the Vedas also describe this, how the emphasis is on our thought world if we want to look at any experience we're receiving in life, that we have certain thoughts which lead us to act in certain ways. Those actions form habits. Those habits ultimately form our character in a large sense, and that character ultimately attracts a particular destiny. And so this is why many philosophies, they stress the thought realm, and also Ayurveda does as well. So it's not simple. It does have many profound, simple tips to implement into beauty and self-pampering and self-care. And it offers us the suggestion and the tools to be able to self-reflect on why we're experiencing what we're experiencing at any given moment, right? Another thing that Ayurveda is not is a strict diet. So you think, oh, well, you're following Ayurveda. This means that you have to eat only this foods, this foods, this foods. You can't have this, you can't have this, you can't have this. And it's seen as a sort of restrictive state. And we know on some level as practicing yogis, for those of us who are doing that, that regulations are meant to be like guidelines for freedom, actually. And so just like when there's a runway at an airport, it's meant to be a safe space for which something actually spectacular can take place and something profound can take place of a huge jet filled with hundreds of people flying into the air. And the same thing with ourselves, that our diet, our lifestyle, the regulations that are given to us are not meant to be absolute, and they're actually shifting with life itself. And so I think understanding that Ayurveda is not a strict diet, and it's when I first started learning about it, I saw, oh, Vata dosha, which I'll speak about a little bit later, what these things mean, but basically the body types. Oh, this body type can only have this sort of food, and this body type can only have this sort of food. And then basically self-prescribing, oh, I'm in this category, which means I can only have these foods, right? So then I look at it and it says, oh, Vata can have this food, but it can't have cauliflower or whatever it is, drying foods or cold foods or light foods, crispy foods, right? And then it becomes like extremely hard to actually uphold and figure out how to implement dietary principles using the science of Ayurveda, because you have a dish that's mixed with many different things. There's cauliflower, there's potatoes, there's tomato, there's this, there's that, all in one dish. And so I think it's useful to recognize that actually within Ayurveda, every single food, herb, spice is described within a text called Dravya Guna Vigyan. Dravya means substance, guna means quality. So how to know the actions and the qualities of the substances that we're putting into our body, right? And that no food is inherently bad in Ayurveda, depending on the condition we have with our body, with our digestive capability, with the season, with our consciousness, with our condition of our physical constitution, right? And along with that, there's many ways I could speak about this, but one way is we learn that there's some unbeneficial foods or foods to avoid. Obviously, meat being tamasic or in the mode of inertia, it makes us inert, it makes us more tired, it makes us more in the realm of lethargy, energetically and physically speaking. It's very hard to digest practically on every biological level. Having a degree in biology, seeing that no animal that eats vegetables or eats meat, they have particular qualities to them, right? So the jaw of the animal that can eat meat cannot go side to side. So if your jaw can move side to side, you cannot, your body's actually not meant to eat meat, because meat eaters, every single one of their jaws is like a clamp and it bites down and it's meant to rip. So we learned that there's different foods that have different qualities and effects. Some make us feel unwell, according to our current condition, and some of them make us feel more well, right? And we know, to simplify it, that practically anything we put in our body is gonna make us feel better or make us feel worse, right? And so how to take that a step deeper is that it's not absolute, right? So we know we can avoid tomatoes because they cause inflammation, or chilies, or potatoes, or so many other foods, right? Nightshades. But Dravya Guna Vigyan in Ayurveda shows that actually you can significantly reduce the inflammatory principles by doing different things to the food. For instance, with tomatoes, you take the skin off, you take the seeds out, you cook it with a little turmeric, right? And with a few other herbs, it greatly, greatly reduces any of the inflammatory effects on it. And so along with this, it shows us that no food is black and white, like absolutely bad. Even meat is prescribed within Ayurveda. That someone has severe muscle deficiency or brain tissue deficiency or nervous system deficiency, they can actually be prescribed meat or bone broth or different things which are the closest in quality to that which they lack in the body and which restores it the quickest. The body has to do the least amount of work when it's prepared in a specific way. So this point is to say that there's not a one size fits all for how to apply Ayurveda to our diet. And another thing is that it's not meant to be a list of foods that we memorize, that here's what you avoid and here's what you can eat, because our body is always shifting. The seasons are always shifting, our digestive abilities always shifting, which is why one of my beautiful teachers, Divya Alter, she wrote a book geniusly titled What to Eat for How You Feel. Because it's not always that eating the same healthy food is going to be healthy for us always. Because our mental state, our emotional state, our physical state is always going to be shifting, right? The last thing I'll say about this point, and please put in questions if I've lost you, if you have anything to add. This is just the insights I've received. But that within the modern context of nutrition, we've seen that throughout the years, there's been various opinions and research and conclusions reached about carbohydrates. Are they good or bad? Sugars, are they good or bad? Fats, are they good or bad? Gluten, is it good or bad? Dairy, is it good or bad? And there's research over the years that says, yes, they're great. And then there's research over the years that says, no, avoid it at all costs. And then again, there's research, actually, it's great for you, right? And so to sort of make an absolute claim about carbohydrates or about sugars or fats or gluten, it's not the model that Ayurveda uses. That Ayurveda uses a different model completely for nutrition that includes all different types of foods, which are categorized by taste, right? The rasas. There's 6 primary tastes that we can experience in any given meal, and each of them has a medicinal effect, right? So carbohydrates and sugars and fats, for the most part, are going to be digested as sweet in the body, which means they're going to nourish and they're going to add tissue to the body. And then other rasas, like bitter, astringent, etc., are going to be extractive. They're going to pull toxins out of the body. They're going to pull things out of the body. So why these different health trends arise, no gluten, no carbs, high caloric intake, whatever it may be, is because we have certain imbalances that arise in society. And because they're experienced on a mass level due to overactivity, overworking, trends in diet, etc., then trends in disease and imbalance start to arise in that society. And then you have to balance it. And for some time, the balance will work, but it's like putting a Band-Aid and then you need another trend to come out and another trend. And a lot of these trends like juicing and ketogenic and paleo are quite destructive to the digestive system, according to Ayurveda. Okay, I've spoken a lot on this point, but first point was Ayurveda is not simple beauty and self-care tips. We covered that. Second is Ayurveda is not just a set of rules that's meant to limit us, especially when it comes to our diet and how we eat, but rather guidelines that when we understand and live within, we can actually thrive and know, oh, I feel like this, therefore I need to eat this. Or, oh, I feel like this, therefore I need to eat this, right? I don't have the scope to go into exactly what that entails, but knowing that that's how Ayurveda operates. Third thing that Ayurveda is not is something just for the physical health, right? So taking into account that Ayurveda is based on the model that our internal world largely dictates our physical health and our experience of the world outside of us, it encourages us to take self-responsibility and gain introspection into what it is that is actually creating the results emotionally, mentally, and physically, that it's not just by chance, right, that we're experiencing this in our particular body we've been given. And it says that we're elemental beings, meaning we have many aspects that create our being, right? We have our subtle body, that's our mind, which is here to accept ideas or reject ideas. Our intelligence, which is meant to guide us on a higher level. What is best for my evolution? What is best for my self-growth, right? False ego, our identity that we've created for ourselves according to what we like and don't like. That's called the subtle body. Then there's the physical body itself, which is composed of the elements, right? And so it's showing us that actually when the physical self and the subtle self are clogged up, it's like we're seeing through glasses that have lots of dirt and are tinted many different colors. And so that's what comes out. That's what we see of the world. We see, oh, this is what the world is like. And also that's what people see of us most of the times, is not our balanced, illuminated self and cleansed self, but rather many of the imbalances that are acting out in different ways. So, oh, jealousy, anger, hatred, nervousness, anxiety. Many of these mental conditions are seen as merely an imbalance of the physical elements within the body, right? As far as them flaring up, right? And so then it becomes actually a route of compassion, that when we see somebody is experiencing those sort of emotions, we can understand and trace it back to just physical imbalance in the body that they've done through their lifestyle. And then it's like, oh, okay, it's not the person that I'm seeing, but it's an imbalance in their physiology, psychophysiology that I'm seeing and experiencing right now. And so the yogis knew this. The yogis knew that in order for the Atma or the soul to actually be seen, for the self to be seen, they had to cleanse the vessel of the body and the mind, right? They had to cleanse that so that who we actually are and the illumination of the heart and of the self can actually be witnessed and can actually be experienced by the self. And so the yogis, I'm not an expert on this, but I've read parts of beautiful texts and very far out texts like the Granda Samhita and many texts written by Lord Shiva for the yogis, where they would do extremely intense cleansing processes, different bandhas and kriyas, and moving the organs and washing them in the water and being able to retract organs and put them back in the body, and so many intense things, because they knew that the psychophysiological vessel was so important to keep completely pure, without dosha, without impurity, in order to be able to actualize the self and reach the Paramatma, right? So this is why it's a sister science to yoga, because yoga in a sense, is Ayurvedic treatment in itself, but also Ayurveda takes it a step further and cleanses the body so we can actually perform yoga in a very enlightened and illuminated way. Okay, so it's not something just for physical health, but can provide deep emotional and mental nourishment as well. Okay, so any questions? I see you guys on here. Put something in if you're feeling it. I'd love to hear from you. Okay, so far I've said Ayurveda is not just for self-care. Ayurveda is not rules for diet or rules to keep us unhappy or restricted. It's not something just for our physical health. And another point that I think is important in our initial understanding of Ayurveda is that it's not an antiquated system of pseudo-medicine. Meaning that when we hear about, if we begin reading about Ayurveda, we can see, there's ether, there's fire, there's air, there's water, there's earth, and all these things form the body. It's like, what does that mean? What do you mean my body is made of ether? What do you mean that I'm primarily made of earth or fire? Like, to my biological, logical, rational mind, that doesn't mean anything to me, right? And so when we first start looking into ancient sciences, it's actually deeply biological, deeply scientific, but at its face value, the terms used are actually more broad categorizations, right? So this brings me to just speak about very briefly the 5-element theory in our biology, right? So when we think about the human body, the physical self is composed of ether, air, fire, water, and earth. And so we can think, what does that mean? That seems so philosophical, right? But it's philosophical. It's representing different functions. It's functional, but it's also biological, meaning that when we think about ether, how does it manifest? It manifests as ether means space, right? All the spaces in the body, the nose, the mouth, the gastrointestinal tract, the respiratory tract, the abdomen, the capillaries, the tissues, the space between the tissues. Those are all examples of space and how ether is present in our body. Air. How does air manifest in our body? Right? Air means ether and movement. Right? So air is any of the principles of movement that our body experiences. Without air, movement cannot take place. Touch can also not take place with no air. And so it's the pulsations of the heart. It's the expansion and contraction of the lungs, right? Even under a microscope, scientists can see that every cell is moving, right? In tiny little ways. Life means movement. And without air, there's the ability for life to exist as we know it. It ceases, right? Also, our nervous system, right? All the electrical impulses and signals that are sent, that's also movement in the body, and it's represented by this air element. Fire. How does fire actually show itself in the body? It's in nature, it's the sun, right? That's the biggest source of fire. It's what's giving prana or life force to this planet, to every single living entity. And the Vaidyas, I was just reading about how my teacher, actually, one of my teachers, their lineage of Ayurvedic practitioners goes back 5,000 years. And one of Krishna's sons at that time developed leprosy. And so they wanted to take him to an island where there was a group of Vaidyas or Ayurvedic doctors so that they could cure Krishna's son. And they took him to this island, and these Vaidyas were actually deeply in tune with the sun and actually I don't want to use this like in a tribal sense, but we're offering prayer to the sun and deeply connected with the Surya Shakti, with the solar energy and prana from the sun, and cured leprosy using different treatments using the sun. And now modern science is going on to confirm that. So anyways, I digress. But the sun or fire manifests in the body as anything that metabolizes, right? Every tissue metabolizes, every cell metabolizes. Our digestive system metabolizes. The gray matter in the brain it metabolizes, and it helps our intelligence function. The retina of the eye helps us perceive light. It takes in fire. It's also a manifestation of fire. All the enzymes in our body are manifestations of fire element, because it's the element of transformation, right? Destruction, creation, forging, transformation. That's in the body, happening through the medium of all these biological processes, right? Water. What does water look like in our body? That's a little bit more simple, but it's all of our digestive juices, the mucous membranes, the plasma, blood plasma, cytoplasm, urine, sweat, saliva. Water is easy to see. And then earth is simply all the solid structures in our body, right? The fat, the cartilage, the bones, connective tissues, all the earthy solid parts of us that build stability and safety, right? So all of this is to say that the theory of the 5 elements is deeply scientific in Ayurveda, and it's now being seen how all those elements are playing out in modern medicine in so many different ways, like the sun example I gave. And also knowing that Ayurveda is not just quick tips for healing, but actually there's a book called Ashtanga Hridayam, right? So Ashta, 8, Anga is limbs. The Hridaya, the heart of the 8 limbs of Ayurveda. So just as Ashtanga Yoga, there's Ashtanga within Ayurveda. And this is the 8 ways of treating people within Ayurveda, right? They're the 8 scientific paths within Ayurveda of Kaya Chikitsa, right? This is the anti-aging medicine, right? So this has been existing for thousands and thousands of years. Komara Britya, this is pediatrics, right? Komara for little kids. Shalya Tantra, surgery. This is also what Sushruta, one of the great modern proponents of Ayurveda, he wrote many books on surgery and replacing organs in the body and grafting skin and implants and so many things that were happening thousands of years ago, actually. Shalakya, excuse me. This is the eye, ear, nose, throat, right? So ophthalmology, dentistry. I've seen videos of beautiful Ayurvedic practitioners that they're using yogic bandhas to put the body's channels or the nadis to sleep, right? So they're using different bandhas, using a throat lock, and they're putting the patient in this position for some time to manipulate the flow of prana in the throat to the head. And after that, they took and without any anesthesia, pulled a few teeth from this person's mouth with 0 pain, right? So we think, how were dental procedures done? It was able to be done without any anesthesia. And that these bandhas, a bandha is simply a lock of the physiology of the body, right? So if we breathe in deeply or we breathe out deeply, we can put the chin through the chest, right? And close the throat. Also, when you prevent yourself from going to the bathroom in the perineum and you lock the perineum, that's another bandha, right? So it's like a container, a way to like lock the passageways of the body. They would use that for dentistry. and pull teeth without any anesthesia and zero pain. Bhuta Vidya, so they had psychology, psychiatry, which was also treating ghosts and spirits and all these sort of far out things as well. Vajikarana, fertility, right? Which is now a huge issue of, having laptops on our screen, looking at screens at night, also like this, which is normally why I wear blue blocking glasses. Because it's messing with our fertility. There's largest rates of infertility now than practically ever before. Even though we have more medicine, more resources than ever before, we're seeing larger rates of birth defect and infertility than ever before. Agadha Tantra is toxicology. And Jata is geriatrics. So these are the Ashta-angas of Ayurveda. So again, showing that actually it was quite vast. And another element to consider is that when the British invaded India and colonized India, they burnt a lot of the Ayurvedic text. And also many of the practitioners that were extremely skilled in Ayurveda, they chopped their hands off in many cases. I know many of the marma therapists, people who are extremely skilled at knowing the vital points of the body, both for warfare and for healing. They chopped fingers off, right? So they can't take pulse, or so they can't heal people using their hands. And so much of this knowledge was lost. And then over thousands of years, we have much of it left through some rare family lineages. And then it was taken to the West and sort of westernized in a certain way. And so we don't see the vastness of it, right? We don't see the vastness of it. Okay. I think that's all I have as far as what Ayurveda is not. If there's any questions on that, then I'm happy to answer those. And I have a few closing things I'd like to say, but really I encourage there to be more activity. And I'm also available for questions after this. You can message me. But one thing I wanted to speak about too, of how not to approach Ayurveda, right? We spoke about what Ayurveda is not, but how not to approach it, in a sense, is many people get trapped in the dosha theory. So for those of you who are not familiar, we spoke about the 5 elements: ether, air, water, fire, earth, etc. These elements are in all of us in different mixtures. And when we have a prominent mixture of 2 or 1 of those, then we categorize that. Okay, Vata means air and ether are prominent. You're going to have a wiry frame. You're going to be more airy in your qualities. You're going to be lighter, right? More spaced out sometimes, just to be very generic about it. Pitta means fire and water. You'll have a more fiery complexion, a more fiery build, a mind that wants to just do and achieve, right? And Kapha, which is the earth and water. So a bigger build, more of the earthy structures in the body. And all of those are valued within Ayurveda. All of those have a very positive aspect to them. So you say, oh, I'm Vata, so I'm just like this. I give hundreds of consultations through Ayurveda and see people speak about it in this way. Oh, well, I'm just Vata, so it's just my nature, right? There's a distinguishment that Ayurveda uses between our prakriti, or our original state of essential health, right, at our essence, and vikruti, which means our present state of imbalance. So many of the times we look at our present state and our present characteristics and qualities and we say, oh, I must be Vata. And then everything we do from then on is in accordance with, I want to balance Vata, right? But it can actually create much more disorder in the body when we self-diagnose, when we self-prescribe, and when we don't actually know what's going to balance us at any given state. We just say, oh, I'm Vata, therefore forever from now on, I'm going to treat my body and my mind like this because this is what I know at this stage balances Vata, right? This is really the allopathic method being superimposed on a very dynamic model of health and well-being, right? And another thing that's very popular is these Procrasti Quizzes, right? What's your dosha? Then you just fill out a quick form, and then you say, oh yes, I am Vata Pitta, and I will treat my body like this forever now because the quiz told me. It's accurate to some degree, but it's faulty also. It has many inaccuracies, and so it's dangerous to self-prescribe and then just go on to do the same activities, which may feel good for now, but may create actually a larger imbalance down the future. So the most accurate way is to go to a skilled practitioner and have the pulse read, right? The pulse nadi chikitsa, examination of the nadi, of the pulse, of the heartbeat, of the body, is the most accurate way to determine your actual nature, right? Your original state of health. And from then we can understand imbalance. And then we can work our way back to health, right? But if we make an assumption about our original state and we make an assumption about our imbalance, and then we do whatever we think, it doesn't have a directionality to it. And it may or may not be good for us, right? I've had incredible experiences with nadi chikitsa, of people reading my pulse, extremely talented and mystical Ayurvedic practitioners that they give 10-minute consultations, right? They read your pulse for maybe 20 seconds and they know a lot about you. Many of these people have what's called siddha, which means they have some sort of mystical insight also. But I sat down in a room with this Ayurvedic doctor I had never met before, doesn't know my name, doesn't know anything about me, sat down, read my pulse, and said, oh yes, you've not been sleeping lately because your digestion's off. And about 2.5 years ago, it seems like you were hit accidentally in your lower back, and that's thrown off your spine, which is why you have neck pain. And I was like, oh. I literally wanted to start laughing and they said many other things that were just so incredibly accurate and mystical, how they actually knew that from reading my pulse. And I had been living in India in a monastery and in a beautiful eco-village, caring for cows and bulls. And one of the biggest bulls came up behind me to try to lovingly move me. And of course, it's 2,000 pounds or 3,000 pounds and hit me with its horns right in my low back. And it's been misaligned since then. And so they knew that without looking at anything about me. They read my pulse within 10 seconds. They said, oh yes, 2 years ago, they knew the time, they knew that it was an accident, they knew the location in my lower back, and they knew it was causing me neck pain up here, which was all true. So it's a very accurate way of analyzing our actual state of health. It's very deep. And what I want to say also is that if we want to start just self-implementing Ayurveda, it's always nice to be under a practitioner. That's the proper way. But if we want to just implement it into our own life and use the bit that we can learn from books and different workshops and classes at the level we have, what is more important than knowing Prakriti, or your original constitution, your original mixture of Vata, Pitta, and Kapha, your identity, so to speak, on a psychophysiological level, more important than knowing that is knowing your Vikriti, or imbalanced state. You say, oh, I'm experiencing anxiety and constipation and loneliness, and my skin is dry, and my this is that, and this is happening, and this is happening. And with that, just by following generic guidelines that are generally good for all people without including, severe cases, it's good for most people, we can implement that sort of lifestyle, and it encourages us to see, okay, I'm experiencing these symptoms. Now all I have to do is look back on the path and see where I strayed from health, strayed from a place of fullness, strayed from a place of vibrancy. And so understanding the imbalances is more important, because once we can know how to address the imbalances using very simple techniques, then naturally we're at our state of health. Instead of trying to figure out our original nature and fix our problems from there and do everything in reference to that, start from, here's all my imbalances, let me reduce those in the ways that I know how, that are effective for most people according to Ayurveda, and naturally I'll arrive at health. Okay? That's that. So don't fall into the dosha trap of getting too heady about, oh, is this for my dosha? Is that for my dosha? Is this for... More important than knowing that is knowing your imbalances and how to mitigate those using simple techniques. And that opposites balance. If you feel cold, add warm and oily and heating things in. If you feel too hot and oily, add dry and cool things in, right? So it's always this principle of however I'm feeling right now can be balanced by its opposing quality and its opposing principles. I hope I'm keeping all of the subjects together. The last thing I'll say before I close here, and this is really, I think, one of the main roadblocks in understanding Ayurveda, is that it's not approached in the same way as allopathic medicine, right? I get many, many messages per week on Instagram, Facebook, texts saying, oh, I have this insomnia or I have these headaches. What do I do? This is the allopathic method where we're looking for a pill. We're looking for a quick fix and we're looking to alleviate the symptoms without understanding how my actions and how my consciousness have made this thing arise, right? So without going too much into depth of that, Ayurveda is not about treating the disease. It's about treating the person, knowing that the person is the cause of the disease and the person is also the remedy of the disease. Right? If I caused it, I can uncause it. Of course, everything's in divine hands, in God's hands, Krishna, the universe's hands. But for most of disease, 80+%, it's completely reversible and preventable by lifestyle alone. And so how much suffering can be mitigated by developing self-awareness, that there is cause and effect, that there is a reason I'm experiencing anything, whether happiness or distress, in my physiology, psychology, in my spirit, right? And so the message that Ayurveda really gives us, and what I want to close with, is to create a culture of self-responsibility, a culture of introspection and curiosity around cause and effect. That our diet, according to Ayurveda, is not just what we put in our mouth, but it's what we put in through any of our senses, right? Because everything is making an impression in the mind. Everything's making an impression in the body. You can eat all the best Ayurvedic food. And Ayurveda takes it a step further and says, you're not just what you eat, but you're what you digest. Right? So you can eat all the best foods in the world, but if you're not digesting it, it turns into poison. Right? Also, the things we digest through our eyes, right? The social media, the tons of information, advertisements, Instagram posts, books, messages, emails, that's coming through the eyes, the messages that are coming through the ears, the honks of the horn, the car screeching, the birds. Everything has either a therapeutic balancing effect or a disruptive effect. What's coming in through our skin, right? The largest membrane of our body, right? The ingredients in the shampoo and the tap water that we have. What is coming in? What is able to be digested, right? The smell, there's aromatherapy. Certain smells change our consciousness for the better. And certain smells change our consciousness in unpleasurable ways. Right? So how to look at all that we're digesting. When Ayurveda asks, what is our diet? It's not just talking about food. It's talking about everything that comes in. And what comes in Some of it's digested and turned into nutrients, which is then forming our entire body and forming our consciousness, and either making it vibrant and happy, or it's creating toxins and pollution and causing imbalance, right? And causing disconnect and causing us to operate through a physical and psychological vessel that's really locked up, right? And then that's what we experience. And there's all the agnis, or the digestive fires of the body. So there's not just what we digest in our belly, but the eyes, the ears, the nose, the mouth, the skin, all have their own digestive capability. And stress is simply an undigested experience, right? So anything that's stress, any toxin in our body, there's going to be what's digested, and there's going to be what's undigested in every experience of life. If we leave what's undigested sitting in our body for too long, it causes disease. And then that disease becomes chronic over time, and it becomes very hard to reverse. Right? And it's also produced how we speak, how we're using the senses. Are we honoring them? Right? How we act. Are we acting in alignment with sacred values? Are we acting in alignment with pragya, our intelligence, right? That's the number one cause of disease, according to Ayurveda, is pragya aparad, to disobey the intelligence of the body, of nature. Right? We're like, ooh, should I have that pint of ice cream? It's like 11 o'clock. I'm guilty of it. We're all guilty of it. But we should know the steps to bring us back towards health if we've committed a crime against our body. Or else the crimes build up, and then the punishment comes in through the form of disease and unpleasurable results in life. Right? How do we honor the natural urges, the Vegas, the sneezing, coughing, farting, belching, yawning, urinating, defecating? Those things should all be honored timely. That's another major cause of disease. And how do we regulate the mental urges? Right? So the physical urges should not be suppressed, but many of the mental urges should be regulated and should be curbed and should be looked at. And that's what yoga is for. That's what philosophy is for. Because if we want to align ourselves with the higher identity, with an identity that's in integrity with nature, with God, with the self, then we need a philosophy to help rationalize everything that we do and every way we act. Right? So there's a lot that could be said. Obviously, this topic has been spoken about for thousands and thousands of years, but I'll spend this last few minutes just answering the question that's here. If anyone else has any questions or appreciations or reflections, please put them in. This is meant to just spur inspiration in the topic of Ayurveda. It's a very dense science, but also just a little bit of its application can save you from tremendous disease and imbalance in the future, right? Also, give the video a like if you liked it, share it, like Boudica, share what they do, Deva Madhava, all these beautiful people that are running this page are absolutely incredible. And they want these Vedic sciences to go out to the world in a way that people can digest. So hopefully this wasn't too much of a deep dive and just enough to understand what Ayurveda is and isn't and how we can begin seeing it in a deeper way. But I'll just answer Elizabeth's question here. She says, is winter a combination of Vata and Kapha or just Kapha? So she's asking, Vata means air and ether, and Kapha means earth and water. So not to get too much into this topic because it's a little bit deeper for those without a frame of reference. But when you think about the seasons, right? Fall naturally becomes dry and cold. Those are qualities of Vata. Each of the doshas, Vata, Pitta, and Kapha, are simply a combination of gunas or qualities, right? Heavy, light, oily, dry, light, cold, hot, etc. And with winter coming, it's a heavier feeling. It's darker, right? There's not as much light. It's slower. It's asking us to go inward, right? All the foods that we eat in the winter are heavier, like root veggies that are growing underground, and the digestion is able to burn them up, right? When it's cold outside, then the body naturally thermoregulates and puts the fire more internal. So then we have a better ability to digest those heavier foods. So fall is going to be very dry and light and airy and windy and spacey, and we may be experiencing a little loneliness, little anxiety, little dryness. I know I'm experiencing some dryness, right? And the same thing will travel into winter. And by the end of winter, we will have gained more heaviness because more of the earth element in the body, right? And all the snow that's built up, all the earth that's built up. And then in spring, it's like the kapha, the water and the ice finally runs off the body, and it's a perfect time for cleansing. So I hope that makes some sense. Okay, I can never tell head and chest congestion in the winter. It's not a cut and dry answer, but generally phlegm and chest congestion is associated with kapha, right? So then heating foods, little ginger, chilies, heating spices, black pepper will clear out a lot of the mucus and congestion. But vata imbalance is a lack of movement, which makes it difficult for heavy kapha to move. Should vata be treated to get kapha moving, or should you balance kapha? I'm not going to go into a detailed answer of this, but generally speaking, and this is going a little bit deeper, vata is always treated first because vata is the principle of movement. So even if pitta and kapha are imbalanced, if you treat vata, again, this is very generic. If you treat vata first, then pitta and kapha in the body cannot move around in their imbalanced state, and you've subdued that spreading. So generally, we always come back to the things that balance vata, which is a regulated lifestyle, a regulated schedule, hot water, having healthy oils in the body like Ayurvedic ghee, like sesame oil, right? Like organic olive oil, root veggies, an abhyanga oil massage, bath, slowing down, reading, not jumping, driving, spinning, sprinting, breathing fast, actually slowing, more grounding, more strengthening, right? Things, not going here, there, everywhere, traveling, but grounding, right? So it's always the opposites. It's always the play of balance, right? When you're balancing on a rope, you go too much this way. The solution is not to focus on that you're going too much this way, but the solution is to go the opposite way. So it's always our case. Just seeing, oh, I feel really heavy and, a little bit of depression and all that. Okay, take it as information. It's not a value judgment. It's not a judgment on our character or our being as a whole, but rather indicator lights on the car, right? When we look at our gas tank in the car and the gas light comes on, we don't start berating the car. We just take it to the gas station. So then these different unpleasurable experiences of the body and the mind, there are little gas lights coming on, and then Ayurveda shows us where we need to drive to take care of it. Right? So it really asks of us self-responsibility, introspection, and a basic curiosity around these principles and how to simply put them into your life. So I have many beautiful courses. I work with people one-on-one. We have beautiful trainings coming up. There's so many resources to begin learning Ayurveda. Much of it is westernized in a sense, and I'm not saying I'm 100% free of that, but to my best ability, I try to present what the lineage of my teachers of beautiful Vaidyas have presented for thousands of years. And so we have a beautiful training coming up, myself and another Ayurvedic practitioner, Madhuri Pura. And we're going to have Divya as part of it, Diana and Virabhadra from the Bhakti Center, Raghunath, all as guest teachers, and others. And it's going to be a beautiful, beautiful program for anyone who wants to come into that. So I'll end here because we're at time. But you can follow me at Yamuna Bihari, YAMUNA BIHARI on Instagram, and I post a lot of beautiful, beautiful content. And then this here on the screen, Jivanam Wellness, that's my website, jivanamwellness.com. And you can go there. I have many articles, recipes, things that can help you understand Ayurveda deeper in a way that I pray is clear and very relevant and helpful for you. So thank you all so much for tuning in. And for anyone who watches this afterwards, I will try my best to answer your questions. I'm always here if you have any questions. And thank you to Bodhika, to Deva Madhava. Please give them some love and stay in tune with all that they're doing, because it's very inspiring, and hope to make this a regular thing. That's my plan. And any suggestions you have for next topics, bring them in. Okay. Thank you all so much for bringing the heart, for bringing your attention, and hope you have a blessed night. Hariyo.